In this video, I'll talk about the Object Manager and Attribute Manager in Cinema 4D. So here we are in Cinema 4D, and let's make a cube like we did in the previous video just by clicking on the cube symbol over here. I think I made two by mistake. There we go. Okay, so we have a cube, and up here in the right, this pane here is called the Object Manager. So like when I create an object, it'll appear here. Okay, in the next video I'll go over how to move objects and stuff, but just for now, just let me move this cube out of the way. And over here, let me make another object. I'll hold down the drop down menu and I'll choose to make a sphere. And here's my sphere. It looks kind of wonky. So, you know, whatever is in the viewport here will show up in the Object Manager. The other things available to you here, I'm not really going to cover those yet. Later in the course we'll use them. Like, for example, the green check mark means you can view it into viewport, so if I uncheck it, it's no longer visible in the viewport. It's still there. And then the last column is for what are called tags, and I'm not going to cover those in this intro video, but I will cover them as the course proceeds. Long story short, you know, don't mess with any of that stuff right now. Just want you to know that you can select, in fact, let me make another object too, just to make things a little bit more interesting. And hit the drop down menu, I'll make a cone. So okay, I got three objects here. And, you know, let me back up. So I can choose, you know, if I want to work on the cube, I can select the cube in the Object Manager. Or if I want to work on the sphere, I can select it there. Now I can also hover over the objects in the viewport and select them. But as your projects get more complex, it's much easier to select the objects in the viewport. Also, I can select any object I want, and I can just hit the delete key on the keyboard and delete it. Excuse me. Another thing I can do is I can select an object. I can do a Command or Control C and a Command or Control V as in Victor and copy. You know, so like you can do the copy paste thing just like you can do in any other application. I'm going to delete this new cube I just made. Lastly, the only thing I want you to know about is you can nest different objects. For example, I can select the cube, click, hold, and drag, and place it right on top of the sphere. And now the cube is a child of the sphere. So if I move the sphere, the cube will move with it. Okay? The cube is now a child of the sphere object. So that's that. Just to make things simple, let me delete my cube by hitting the delete key. Okay, now the other thing is the Attributes Manager here. If you look down here, right now it's blank because nothing is selected, but if I select the sphere object, the attributes of the sphere are presented to me. There's different tabs here. The ones we're mostly concerned about are object and coordinates, but let me just go through these. This is the Object tab. If it's selected, you can adjust the radius of the sphere with this slider, or you can place the cursor over the value there and slide left and right as well. You can also select this value and type in a value, you know. Segments is the amount of segments in your sphere. If we look at this, let me move this more to the origin so it doesn't look so weird. When the sphere is created, it only has 16 segments, as all of the objects that are created have a default number of segments. Okay, so if we look at this, I'm going to increase the number of segments, and I'm going to zoom out. As I increase the number of segments, you can see it gets nice and smooth. Okay, so, but let me show you something here. So this is the sphere, right? If I go, this is new material. If I go to display, you can see the different kinds of shading. The default is called Gouraud shading, is how that's pronounced. It means it's emulating kind of sort of 3D shading of an object. There's a lot of stuff here, but I just want to go over the next one. Gouraud shading lines. If I select Gouraud shading lines, you can see that the number of segments are visible. So let me go back here to the attribute manager, and so let me decrease the number of segments, and I'll back out so you can see the number of segments decreasing until it gets into like a hexagonal kind of thing. I forget what as I'm talking, I can't remember what the name of that shape is, but and as I increase the segments, this gets nice and smooth. The one thing to know that is with more segments takes up more RAM. Now for a simple thing like this, like a sphere, we could go up to 96 or whatever, and it's going to look really nice, and it's not going to take up a lot of memory. But whenever you have a very, very complex object, the number of segments is something to keep in mind. But for right now, where we're at in this course, it's not a big deal. But anyway, segments and radius can be adjusted here. Under the Object tab. Fong, don't worry about that, we'll talk about that later. Coordinates is where this thing is placed in the Cinema 4D world. So if I'll move the object like this. Now let me zoom in on the coordinates data here. As I move the object, you can see that the coordinates change. Likewise, I can go in here and I can zero out these. I could type in 0 and 0 and then hit return, and now the object is in the origin of the Cinema 4D world. And this is a good thing to know about, because when you're building stuff, it's good to build stuff around the origin, even if it's a complex object, and then move it and position it, whatever. Like don't if you're going to build like let's say a chair or an airplane, that's a better one. Like, going to build an airplane, don't build it way out here, build it around the origin and then move it to where you want it. The other attributes here are the rotation and the sizing. So like if I can size it along the x-axis, I can change the size along the y-axis, etc., and along the z-axis. This is rotation, which is going to be hard to see with a sphere. So let me delete my sphere, make a cube. Okay, now rotation is adjusted here in this column. Okay. Basic, really not much to know about there. It's just the name of the object. So really, in our, especially first, this is a big deal. Did I say? Yeah, I did say size. Okay. The object and coordinates are the only two tabs that we'll really be dealing with in the attribute manager. The only other thing to remember is if I deselect the object, there's no attributes. Secondly, this layers tab is something we will cover later in the semester, but it's not important right now. It's when you have very, very complex objects, you can you can adjust the visibility and editability of groups of objects to make it easier to work on the big project. For now, just make sure the attributes tab is enabled, and we're just going to be working with coordinates and object. Okay, so that is the object manager and attribute manager introduced.